Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Poets Corner. I'm Anna, and today we will be discussing The Princess Saves Herself in This One by Amanda Lovelace. This book is all poetry. There is no prose, so it is storytelling, but it is not going to be any type of mystical fantasy or like a novel. It is purely poetry. Another cool thing to note about this book is that it's written by a really young author. Amanda Lovelace is currently in college right now, trying to get her BA in English Literature and Sociology. So it's not like she's grown up and this is now what she does. She's doing this now, which I think is a relatable thing for a lot of young people, a lot of people like us who have dreams to be a writer, and I think it's so cool that she didn't wait. Like, her poetry was so good that she's published a book while in college, and that is sort of like one of my goals as well, and so I relate to her book even more through that. It's got 4 parts to it. Each part is about different aspects of a fairy tale story. So we always have a princess. She's usually considered to be a damsel, hence the back. The story of a princess turned damsel turned queen. You always have a queen, usually an evil queen, although in this story there's a bit of a twist. And lastly, the story always relates to you in particular. So those are the 4 sections that make up this book: the princess, the damsel, the queen, and you. So the really cool thing about this book is that it really relates to anyone who has faced or has experienced the death of a loved one for any situation or circumstance. This situation in particular focuses on a mother who is apparently an abusive alcoholic, and sort of how the author or the writer deals with living with someone who is in that situation. And then it seems that throughout the first section of the book we find out that the queen, aka the mother, is not only an alcoholic but she's also very ill. And so now the author has to deal with the fact that she wants to know her mother in a state that's different from what she's always known her mother to be, an alcoholic, and now she may not get a chance to, and sort of the grief and the confusion that surrounds that situation. Another thing that happens in this book is this author's sister. I don't know if it's actually Amanda Lovelace's life that this book is about, but at least the author or the writer in this situation, her sister also dies, but it's almost like a premature death in that her sister was young and her mother was old, and yet her sister died before her mother, and it was just sort of a very heavy, very sad situation for one person to be a part of in such a short time. Of course, that bleeds right into the second section, which is about the damsel and how her grief sort of becomes this, this thing that it's very hard to deal with grief and to not know what to do with grief. And I think a lot of times, especially nowadays, people grieve in very different ways and sometimes very dangerous ways. And it's because a lot of people don't know how to grieve, or when, or if they even should. Perhaps they feel weak because they feel that grief is a sign of weakness, which it's not at all. In fact, people who don't grieve end up with a host of other problems later on in their life, because you're not supposed to keep that sadness and that despair pent up inside you. That is why they call it a grieving period. The you section in this book is almost like Amanda Lovelace's letter to young girls, or maybe even to her past self, or maybe her future self, her daughter that she has yet to have. It's an inspiration and sort of a message to girls of any age that they should find what's important to them first before they go looking for love. I think that is such an important concept, because a lot of times we don't know what we value, and then we jump into relationships and we realize that in the process we've sacrificed a lot of what we value, and it hurts when you realize that the other person doesn't care about what you care about, or doesn't even care about you as much as you thought they did when you put so much into a relationship. And that works both ways for both men and women. I don't want to ostracize guys as like these horrible people. No, it's both men and women. Although this Amanda Lovelace is specifically speaking to young girls to find what they value the most and don't compromise those things. She speaks a lot about self-respect, the sort of magic that everyone has in them, which is an interesting concept to put in poetry. I think magic is often seen as something that's in fantasy and it doesn't exist, and we only read about it or watch movies about it. And I think there's a sense of magic, maybe not the Harry Potter magic, but you know, maybe it's more mystery and wonder that she's trying to express here. This is also a poetry book about love, not just familial love, but there is some romantic love in there about boys who've done her wrong, and so how she deals with that and how she finds strength through the pain that she feels, and how she learns to sort of navigate new relationships and learns not to sacrifice what she holds dear for another person just because they ask her to, sort of finding her worth and her value and not compromising that, finding someone who values what she values as well. And so I guess the main point is that throughout this book, she learns that sometimes a princess has to go through really deep and dark and painful situations, and yet though she looks like a damsel, she's actually a queen, which is, I think, the main message of this book. You guys have a read and let me know if you come up with the same outcome. Great thing about poetry is that it is so open to interpretation, and it is so fluid in the way that people see it, that I could see it one way and perhaps somebody else could see it a totally different way, and yet none of them are necessarily wrong. And so I would definitely recommend this book for anyone who wants to get into poetry but maybe thinks that it's like an archaic form of of writing. You know, if all the people think of poetry as just Shakespeare, then yeah, I think a lot of people would hate poetry, because as beautiful as Shakespeare is, it's very hard to read nowadays. You know, with the introduction of spoken word, I think it's a great way of reintroducing poetry back into society and letting people know that it's not an archaic form of expression, and that it's actually a very, very purposeful way of saying what you mean, and also using your creativity to sort of fuel it into, you know, your life. Yeah, everyone, go have a read of Amanda Lovelace's The Princess Saves Herself in this one. All right, bye.